All right. Thank you, Shar. And thank you all for having me tonight. I really appreciate you letting me be here. But I mean, I am a member of the league, so I guess I could be here anyway. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you a rundown of best practices and things that we want to make sure that we're doing when we're registering voters at the Expo to make sure that we're not only doing it accurately, but we're doing it legally and making sure that we're very thorough and as helpful as possible. So before we go on to the next slide, just a couple things that I want to lay out there to start. The way that this is going to be working is we're going to have one, maybe two people set up at a table at the Expo with voter registration forms and also some information for people to access important websites, which I'll get into later, if that is necessary. What we'll be doing when we're there, we'll start by just sitting at that table, and as people walk past, you'll want to be friendly with them. You'll want to greet them. You'll want to say hello. And the way to sort of broach this topic, the way to get people to come to the table to talk to you is to ask them a question, something along the lines of, are you registered to vote, or is your voter registration updated? It can honestly be anything that you want along those lines, as long as it feels comfortable to you. The latter one is specifically useful because asking people if their voter registration is updated or up to date is going to get them to think about whether or not they actually have an updated voter registration, and then they can come and update their voter registration with you at the table. But again, anything is going to be fine. From there, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about actually filling out, we're going to talk before we do that. I did look at the slides before this, I promise. We're going to talk about something that we want to make sure that people have in place before they fill out their voter registration forms is whether or not they are eligible. So there are 6 requirements, and these requirements are all listed at the top of the voter registration forms that you'll have available. So if you ever need to reference them, they'll be right there. But just to go over them, they first need to be a citizen of the United States. They need to be at least 18 years old on or before the date of the general election, which I believe is November 7th this year. They need to be a resident of Ohio at least 30 days before the election. So if the Expo is going to be on the 11th, then wait, no, that's completely wrong day. I'm sorry, guys. My brain is all over the place. They need to be a resident of Ohio for the last 30 days. So if it's by the Expo on the 11th, it needs to have been 30 days before that. And the other ones, they can't be incarcerated for a felony conviction. They can't have been declared incompetent for voting purposes by a probate court, and they can't have been permanently disenfranchised by violations of election laws. So those are the 6. Really, you're only going to have to focus on those first 3 requirements. So citizen of the United States will be at least 18 years old on or before the general election, and a resident of Ohio for the last 30 days, which will mean they will have needed to have moved in by February 11th in order to be eligible to register a vote when they see you at the Expo on March 11th. So with that, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. As long as they meet all of those requirements, then they are good to go ahead and start filling out the application to register to vote. So this is what that is going to look like. All of these highlighted sections are sections that people are going to need to fill out. The non-highlighted sections are not necessary for them to fill out unless they want to. So we'll start with the top. We first and foremost want to make sure that people are selecting the box that correctly describes what purpose they are going to be using this form for. It is something that people will use when they are registering for the first time, but if you are updating your address or changing your name on your voter registration, on your voter record, and you can use this form for that purpose as well, you'll just need to indicate that in one of those boxes. So when people are filling that out, you'll want to make sure that you ask them before they fill it out whether or not they're registering for the first time or updating their name or address, and then they'll select the appropriate box. Something important to keep in mind here too is even if they were a registered voter in another state before this, if they are living in Ohio now and they have not been registered in Ohio before, they'll select registering as an Ohio voter even if they had an active voter registration in another state. That was a problem we ran into a little bit when doing this in Perrysburg last year. From there, they'll select a couple boxes that will confirm some of the requirements that were listed on the previous page. Are they a US citizen? Will they be 18 by or before the date of this year's general election. And then most of the rest of the things are self-explanatory. We'll get into a couple of specifics as to what boxes to look out for to make sure that they're putting in the correct information. But as long as you are making sure that they fill out their name, address, telephone number is always good to fill out, county social security number or driver's license number, things of that nature, then they should be good. I will stress too that they will need their social security or driver's license number in order to complete the voter registration accurately. That's how they identify that you are a person who is on the record as living in Ohio. And Katelyn will get a little bit more into the specifics of what is and isn't allowed to be used as data for voter registration when we get to updates to the voter registration laws based on this most recent House bill that is passed. So again, most of the stuff is self-explanatory. That black box you see on the right side there, the one that says for board use only, is oddly enough for board use only. They won't want to fill that out. If they touch that, you'll want to give them a new form. We don't want them writing anything in there. And the last thing that I want to say too is that with voter registration forms, it is required that the person who is registering to vote fills it out themselves. So we cannot fill in any of this information for them. We can highlight it like Katelyn has done here, or whoever has put this in the slides here has done with this snippet of the voter registration form. But when it comes to actually filling out the form, that needs to be done by the person who is registering to vote or updating their registration. And I believe it needs to be done in black or blue ink. I'm not sure if that's a solid requirement, but we'll have pens there that only write in black and blue. So not something that we need to particularly worry about. Before we move on, I know we covered a lot of information there. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask about general best practices for filling out the voter registration form? Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
I understand that there are 2 registration forms available these days. Is this the newest one that you're showing?
So, you can register to vote on a paper form. This is the paper form that we're showing. These are the forms we'll have available at the table at the Expo. You can also register to vote online too. And we've set up QR codes that people can scan with the cameras in their phones if they want to use the online application when they're at the table, if they don't have time. So those are the 2 forms, but the content between the forms are the same. And this is the only paper form that exists.
That's not the way I heard it at the voter.
There was a change made, a small change made with HB 458, which I will get to, but that change to the form just has to do with the photo ID requirements.
Okay, very good. Okay. I just knew I heard last night there are 2 forms out.
Yes.
And apparently they don't care for the primary, but we don't have a primary anyway.
Correct.
So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So my knowledge about voter registration is pre this new bill. Anything that you have heard, any questions you have about this new House bill, Katelyn's going to be able to answer that for all of you later in the presentation.
All right. Very good.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions? And if you do, feel free to just turn on your microphone and start speaking.
Okay, Matt, this is Robin. It's
Hi,
from
Robin.
the previous slide, but I'm a little confused as to why you're worried about February 11th when the words on the slide say it's 30 days before election, which means as long as they were an Ohio resident by, what is it, September 7th or
Can we go back to that slide?
And it should be okay.
Because I'm fairly certain it's 30.
This says before election, so.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, I thought it meant 30 days before the day that they are registering. So that's a good catch. Thank you for catching that. So it is 30 days before the election, which will be October 7th, probably October 8th, because October has 31 days. But yeah, as long as they're living here on the day that they come to register to vote, they should be good. So thank you for catching that. All right. Any other questions? All right, so here's some tips that we want to cover before we move on to some of the information that is going to be changed regarding the new bill. First, we always want to make sure that we double check every form. When someone is done filling out a form, you want to look over it before before you send them on their way, to make sure that they filled out every box that they need to fill, because again, we can't fill out anything for them. So if they need to change something or need to fill out a box that wasn't already filled, we can't do that unless we have them here to do it themselves. So always double check before you let anybody go away when they're coming to register to vote, so that they can fill in anything that they might have missed. What we'll do with these two is specifically, we are going to hold on to the forms when they are done. And then after this event is over, we are going to turn them into the Board of Elections. So if they want to take them with them, we'll let them know that we are trying to keep all of the forms with us so that we can turn them in, just to verify that we know these people are getting registered to vote. If they are super passionate about it, really insist on it, you can let them. But again, that's just our way to verify that the forms are getting turned in and they are getting registered. We're just going to turn those into the Dropbox at the Board of Elections afterwards. And that's probably something that I'll be taking care of, since I'll be there that day. So just make sure you hold on to those forms and keep them in a safe place when they are done. Something I'll add here as well, we talked about QR codes that will be available while people come up to the table. So we've made a couple. One of them is for the online voter registration form. If somebody here needs to update their voter registration or isn't registered to vote but doesn't have a lot of time, please direct them to scan the QR code that will be available on the table. That will take them to the online registration form. We can give that, we'll have that labeled for you so that you'll know exactly where to point. If for whatever reason that person does not want to do it online, or they're not able to scan it with the phone that they have, then you can give them one of the paper forms for them to take and fill out on their own, as long as you let them know that it needs to be turned into the Wood County Board of Elections, because that's where it needs to go in order for the form to be processed and for the registration to be officially uploaded into the voter record. What we can also do as well, something that wasn't included on this slide during the last revision, but might be included at some point, is that we will have another QR code there for voter lookup. And this is a website we'll give you all to use beforehand if you aren't comfortable scanning QR codes. But on the Secretary of State's website, you are able to use a function where you can put in somebody's first name, last name, and county and see if they are currently a registered voter. And you'll be able to verify whether or not they're registered at the address that they currently live at, things of that nature. So if anybody is ever curious about whether or not they're registered to vote at the proper address or registered to vote at all, or if you just like to offer them the chance for you to confirm whether or not they're registered, then that's a resource that you can use. And again, if they're on the go, that's a resource they can use by scanning a QR code that we'll have available at the table. So just to cover those things again, since they're not on the slide, there is an online voter registration form that people can have access to if they aren't able to stay to fill out the whole form at the table. And we can also both give them the website to look up their voter information, and we'll be able to look that up ourselves while we are there. We'll give you the website and show you how to do it and everything.
Right, Debbie, I see you have your hand up. I don't know if Matt can see that.
I can't see anybody's
Okay.
hands, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to say something about the online system, and that is on the paper form, you can use your social security number to register, but on the online form, you have to have either an Ohio driver's license or Ohio ID. Now, there actually is a reason for that, is that when on the paper form, you give your signature, so they know your signature. Now, when you fill out the online application, they will then call up your signature from your driver's license. And so they will have verification of your signature that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, good catch, Debbie. Thank you. So yeah, if they do it online, then like Debbie said, they can use their Ohio driver's license or Ohio ID, which is something Katelyn will talk about more, because Ohio ID is like a big part of this new bill, but not their social security because of the signature. But if they are filling out the paper form with
They
us,
need both.
they are.
Sorry, they need both online. It requires your social security number and an ID number.
Okay. They need both. Fantastic. Right. And then if you're doing it in person, then
That could
it
be
can-
the new system. So probably up until the new rules come into effect, then they only need their driver's license, or well, but most people do have a social security number. So I mean, in that so I could have misspoke there, but definitely you do need a driver's license.
Okay, gotcha. So for all identification requirements, driver's license, social security, Ohio ID, etc., Katelyn is going to tell you verbatim what is going to be required by the state, online and in person, once we get to the new bill changes section of the presentation. That's when we'll confirm that for certain. Because there are lots of different intricacies and new rules that have been introduced. But they'll need at least one of those things: Ohio driver's license, social security, or Ohio ID for all of them. And it might be more than one depending on the format and depending on the stipulations of the new law. All right. Any other questions? All right, we'll cover quickly the rest of this slide here. So, there were just a few more points on that last slide before we're ready to move on to the new bill. So just really quickly, we know this is an American voter registration form. We don't need people to put the country that they're in. There is a county section though, but a lot of times people will confuse that for country. So make sure that people are putting Wood or whatever county they're in, and not USA. I will say too, if somebody is not from Wood County, let's say they're coming down from Toledo and they're registering to vote in Lucas County, we can still turn those voter registration forms into the Wood County Board of Elections when we're done, because they're all connected through the Secretary of State system. So they'll still be able to upload that and get them registered to vote. So even if they're coming from a different county, we'll still hold on to that and be able to turn that in at the end of the event. There are 2 dates that people need to fill out on this form. They need a birth date and they need a current date. The birth date is the first date they'll need to fill out, and the current date will be closer to when they put their signature. So just make sure that they don't make sure that they don't mix those up. We don't want people saying that they were born on March 11th, 2023, because they would not be able to register to vote if they were. Again, we've got the identification requirements, which Katelyn will go into more depth in here in a second. We talked about a phone number briefly when we were going over the sections for people to fill out. It's not technically required if people really don't want to include it, but we should all be encouraging people to include their phone numbers on the voter registration forms, because if there are any issues that arise with the voter registration form and they need to be fixed or they need to be refilled out, the phone number is going to make it easier for the people at the Board of Elections to get in contact with that specific potential voter so that they can address the problem more quickly. And then, the last step was something we already talked about. The LWVO recommends taking completed forms inside to the BOE. That is what we'll be doing. We'll be holding on to those, and at the end, we will take them all to the Board of Elections. So that's all of our voter registration tips. That is, all of our voter registration process, from, greeting people to asking them whether or not they're registered, to walking them through the process, to any tips that we want to make sure that we use, any best practices. So before we finish this section and move on to other orders of business and talk a little bit more about the new bill, does anybody have any questions about anything that we've covered so far? And you're welcome to go ahead and unmute and just start talking, because I can't see anybody, unfortunately. All right. Well, if you have any, feel free to speak up and ask them at any time. Otherwise, we will go ahead and move on to the next section of the presentation.
All righty, I will take over from here. Some of the changes do apply to voter registration. So over here on the left, I have part of the old voter registration form. And at the top where it says registering by mail, if you did not have your Ohio driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security, in the past, you could make a copy of a photo ID, a military ID, a utility bill, a bank statement, a paycheck, anything that you could use previously as an ID at your polling place. you could use as your ID to register to vote. This rarely happened. I've never registered anyone who needed to do this, but it is something that happened. We can no longer do that. It has to be Ohio ID, driver's license number, or social security number. Those are the only things you can use as ID to register to vote. The same thing, the bottom here would be on the back of it, and it would say the Ohio voter ID requirements. Those have changed. And so our new forms say you must have a photo ID and what it needs to be. So that's the only differences in the voter registration forms. So it's just a very small difference that has to do with the photo ID. And the photo ID, this is it's a really big change. And so most people do already use their driver's license when they go in to vote. But for people who don't, they might not find out until they get there on election day to vote. So you need an unexpired Ohio driver's license or an Ohio ID card. And that can be probation, a motorcycle, interim, temporary. It can be suspended if you still have it on your person, but it needs to be an official ID provided through the BMV. When they say Ohio ID card, that needs to be a card you got from the Ohio Department of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. If the address on it is an old address, that is fine. What's most important is that it is an unexpired photo ID. The address doesn't have to match what they are registered with. You can also use a military ID, and that needs to be a United States military ID card or an Ohio National Guard card or a U.S. Department of Veterans ID card. Some counties provide veterans with free IDs. Those are not eligible to be a photo ID at the polls. And new this year, this is the first time you'll be able to use your U.S. passport, which includes the passport card. So do we have any questions on this section? Because it's brand new and is most likely to be the most confusing.
Can you go back to the one before? Because once again, the instructions seemed odd to me.
Okay, so what is on the voter registration form?
Right, because it says identification requirements, and it says if you don't have an Ohio driver's license or an ID, you can provide the last 4 digits of your social security.
Right,
But
so
then you
that is
also
still
have to have
appropriate
some sort
and
of
allowed.
ID. But what would you have if you don't have an Ohio state driver's license, or what would you have other than that, unless you're saying it's the military ID or the passport?
So to register to vote, you can use the last 4 of your social security
Okay,
number. That's fine for registering to vote.
but when
But
you go in to
can't
vote, you
use
have
a
to have
social
one of those
security
things.
card to vote in person at the polls. You need a photo ID to go vote, but you can use your social security number to register to vote.
Okay, so it's very weird. So if you don't have an Ohio ID, then you have to have one of the other things on your list, a passport or a military ID, basically. There isn't
Yes.
another photo ID, so.
Well, the
okay.
driver's license there, because an Ohio
If you don't
ID.
have that. But if you don't have that was the point. If you don't have an Ohio driver's license or an Ohio ID. Yeah.
Right, you need a passport or to hopefully be in the military.
All right. Thanks.
Any other
Katelyn,
questions?
I have another question. So as far as, so Ohio IDs are obviously the new factor here. How would people go about getting that? Let's say they don't have a driver's license, but also don't have military ID or passport. Where would they be able to get an Ohio ID?
So the problem is all of the rulemaking process is still ongoing. And in the League of Women Voters Ohio training, it's still in flux how exactly you will be able to get your free ID card, but everyone will be eligible. But we don't know exactly how it's going to work just yet.
Gotcha. Okay. I thought I heard
Okay.
something about the BMV, but yeah.
In the past,
in the rulemaking process.
in the past, you had to go to the BMV and you had to have a birth certificate.
Yes, you will. It'll be a similar process to getting a driver's license. You'll have a slew of official documents that you'll need to prove your identification, and you'll need to go to the BMV.
Well, when I got my mother's state ID, we just needed a birth certificate, which was a problem for us because hers had been burned in a fire. And took us about 4 years to get one of those documents everybody fought about that Barack Obama had. And that served for the birth certificate. But other people came in while we were there with just their birth certificate and they got it.
Yeah, so that's part of the concern, is that for a lot of people, they may not have a birth certificate at the ready. And that's why we're going to try to reach as many people as we can. We're lucky in Wood County because only Fostoria has a primary. So we get extra months before our general election. Okay, so with the photo ID, there is a religious exemption, but this is a serious exemption, and they will check the BMV to make sure that you don't have a driver's license with a photo. The voter will have to complete an affidavit of religious objection and provide the last 4 digits of their social security number, but then they will be permitted to vote. You cannot have a driver's license from one state and an ID card from another state. So there's been some confusion for out-of-state college students that they could just go and get a free Ohio ID and use that. Do not do that unless they want to relinquish their driver's license from their home state. You cannot hold both simultaneously. As we said, in the rulemaking process is still ongoing. So hopefully we will have new information soon to find out how exactly people can access the free ID card. And if someone does show up to vote in person and they do not have a valid photo ID, they will need to vote a provisional ballot. They will then get instructions from the Board of Elections on what to do for their next step, how to make sure that their vote will be counted. And they will have until the 4th day after Election Day to cure, to make sure everything is right with their ballot so it can be counted. Previously, we had until the 10th day after Election Day to cure ballots, and now it is just 4 days. And vote by mail is an option. It does not require a photo ID. All you have to do to vote by mail is provide the last 4 digits of your social security number if you don't have the photo ID. You can also use your ID number or your driver's license number as well, but it is not required. And to register online now, you do need both a social security number and a driver's license or state ID number. So for folks who don't have those, you can still register on a paper form. Okay, and some other changes: absentee voting applications have to be turned in 7 days before Election Day. So if someone is interested in voting by mail, voting an absentee ballot, they need to fill out that application and get it to the Board of Elections 7 days before Election Day. And then those ballots need to be received back at the Board of Elections within 4 days after Election Day. But they need to be postmarked the day before, the Monday before Election Day. So if you're talking to someone who wants to vote by mail, encourage them to apply for the ballot as soon as possible, fill it out, and get it back to the Board of Elections as quickly as they can. And if they do miss the postmark deadline of Monday, they can take it to the Board of Elections on Election Day up until 7:30 when polls close. And there's been some changes to the early voting schedule as well with the new law. There will be no early voting the Monday before Election Day, and the hours are slightly different, and those are all available online. I didn't copy them here since we're so far out from our next election. Another change is it's official now that boards of election may only have 1 drop box. And there is speculation that during early voting, only ballots will be permitted to go in there. So voter registration forms or absentee ballot requests would need to be taken into the Board of Elections. Voters must now officially give a signature. They have to sign the poll book when they go to vote. Previously, I guess they could just write their names, but now it needs to be a signature. And curbside voting is still available for those with disabilities. And my understanding is the Board of Elections cannot challenge whether or not someone has a disability. Any questions before we go to the next slide?
Katelyn,
Yes, sure.
last night at the voter service meeting, they were saying that young people today are not acquainted with the post office. They don't use post offices. And so they're saying a problem that they're seeing is that they don't understand what postmarked means. So if we're trying to educate people, we might want to be aware of that.
Yes,
Depending
yes,
on
they need to
the age
know.
group we're
You need to
dealing with.
go inside to the post office, talk to the clerk at the desk and say, I need this to be postmarked. And then they will put the stampy on it and handle
Right.
it. They
So
cannot
we
just
might
take
need
it to
to
the
tell
post
people
office
that.
and chuck it into a mail slot. Thank you. That's important. And
Can I-
speaking of
can I
young people
ask-
not knowing what to do with the post office, we cannot provide stamps. So
I'm
you can
sorry.
tell people how to go get a stamp, but you cannot give them money for a stamp or give them a stamp. Sorry, go ahead, Jill.
Sorry, I just was wondering if there is a reason why requesting absentee ballots isn't electronic.
I think it's something that the league has been pushing for, but so far, I don't think it's happened yet. But that's all something that we can contact our representatives and the Secretary of State's office and tell them that we would really appreciate.
I just thought if there was a reason that was known, it would be nice to know what it was.
I can't tell you, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And an easy to remember link to the Ohio Secretary of State's website is voteohio.gov. I think that one is pretty easy to remember. It's a little easier than ohiosos.gov. And like Matt said, how to check the status of a voter registration, you can just go to this website. We will have the QR codes. And if you Google Ohio voter lookup, this is usually one of the very first links that comes up in the results. Okay, and I think that was all we had on the new law and voter registration. Any questions on that before we learn about vote411.org? Alrighty, and Shar is our expert. Ooh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was slow to unmute. Have we, telling us all this stuff about what students don't know, that's very interesting, but it makes sense. They don't write letters or communicate through mail, but have we considered working with the governance class over at the high school to go in and give some of this information and go over some of these forms, or do you think they do that anyway?
I know it's something that we have discussed for the last few years, and I think in the past, I was under the impression that the government classes did cover some of this, but I mean, it's something to bring up at the next board meeting to see if somebody wants to reach out. Shar?
Well,
I heard Jeff Nichols, who teaches government at Bowling
Yeah.
Green High School, speak
Yeah.
last week at Kiwanis. He was our inspirational educator. He does register students to vote in that class. My grandson's in that class, so I'll find out by the end of the semester if he actually did it. He told us he does that, and I verified talking to him afterward. So he does that, and I expect if he does that, he talks about some of these things. I don't know if he talks about post offices and postmarks, but you know,
Well-
he does do the registering, so he's talking about how to go vote.
Well, if
Well,
I
this-
can add something, I think part of the problem is that if a student is 17 and it's going to be a year before they vote, they're not going to be paying attention. They're not going to be processing this. So for students who, if the election is a couple of months away and they're actually going to be voting, they'll pay attention because it's relevant to them.
And it also might change by the time the 17-year-old is ready to vote. The State League has a program called Kids Vote. And this is on the Oxford League's website. That's where I discovered it. And I just thought that might be, I know everybody's real busy, but it might be something we want to think about, getting involved if you feel like looking up Kids Vote. It is a league program that we might be interested in.
Well, they can only register 17-year-olds who will be 18 by election day. Those are the 17-year-olds in senior government classes that can get registered. Because that's the rules they already, Katelyn and Matt already told us about. So my grandson just turned 18 Sunday, so he's ready to get registered.
Righty. So this is what when you go to vote411.org, this picture here is what the top of the website is going to look like. Register to vote, verify voter registration, make a plan to vote. And when you scroll down, here we go, you can get your personalized voting information. You'll enter your personal home address, hit submit, and it will bring up information about your election. And these are some screenshots I took using, Virginia had a special congressional election. So I picked a random address in Richmond and plugged it in. So up at the top, you see here, the upcoming elections, their primary May 2nd, know your ballot, what the races are. And down here, Virginia U.S. House District 4 special election. So if you clicked view race, it would show you about the race, some information, and then who the candidates were. And as you continue to scroll down, it would have questions. And I believe these are similar to some of the questions that are in our voter's guide. So questions that are put on, and the candidates get to submit their own answers and do it all on their end. And then it's there for all of us to look at and compare the candidates. Unfortunately, it looks like these candidates did not fill out the league's questions, but that is also something that you can encourage your candidates in your area to do. Attend the league forum, fill out the league questions, participate, with the activities the league is doing. And if I click, hopefully this will bring me up. Can you all see the website loading? Okay, Shar has provided an example. Oops. So that we can go through this together. See what it would look like when you have a race. So we put in our address. It'll show us our upcoming elections.
Are you trying to share your screen right now?
Yes. Did it stop sharing?
Yep.
It's not been working the whole time. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me see here. All righty. How about now?
I can see it now.
All right. So I scrolled down, plugged in an address, and now here are the language selection options. I would like English. I'm going to view my races. And here we go. I have two options. Here's one. I click view race. Some information about the race. And here are the candidates that we have. Quite a number of candidates to look at. If we check out Jimmy Bean here, I'd like to see his answers and Lola Bug's answers. And then I can scroll down, and here are some information about the candidates and their questions and the answers that they provided here. So you can go ahead and scroll through the different questions that they answered, the answers that they inputted. And you can go back up top and check. I want to change it to different ones. Scroll down. Okay, and you can use all this information. And I believe, let's say we like Jimmy Bean. So, and then we have another race, a ballot measure. Okay, and am I for it or against it? And we can look here, some of the argument, what it means, whether a yes vote or a no vote. No, and I like the no, and I finish. And I can have all of that emailed to me, or I can print it. And you are permitted, when you make your choices before election day, you can write down or print this off, and you're welcome to take that with you into the election booth. You don't have to remember everything, especially when we have elections where there are multiple ballot issues and multiple races. You don't have to memorize all that. You can take it with you, write it down and take it with you. Now I'm gonna try to get back to my presentation here.
You can use 411 also, as you noted at the very beginning, to check whether you're registered. You can go to the Secretary of State's site, but you can do it also on 411 if you're on there anyway. And Katelyn, if you put that little address in and anybody wants to either photo it or take a copy of it, anybody can play with this and play with the animals and see how it works. This is the first time they've had a ballot where you can see more than 2 candidates at once and compare them. It was always 2, and now it's more than 2 if you want to. If there are more, I don't think our race this fall is going to have that, but you know, when you have those where there's multiple candidates, well, they might for school board. So,
And that's true.
so you might want to see all 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. We had 7 a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is a new ballot that she was showing you. That's why they gave you this sample with the animals.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat system. It's a really nice way to see what the candidates have to say and have it all right there and say, I like this one or I like that one, and then be able to remember. Okay, any questions about Vote 411 before we talk specifically about the Expo a little bit more? Okay, so at the Expo, it is at the Fairgrounds at the Pratt Pavilion. We are booth number 31. They ask that you park near the Junior Fair building, which is north of the Pratt Pavilion. Like Matt said, some things as people are going by the table. Are you registered to vote? Have you heard of Vote 411? Are you familiar with the League of Women Voters? And we can ask them if they want to check their registration. We can help them register. If possible, if you have a laptop or a tablet, you can bring that and set it up, and we can show people Vote 411. I'll make sure that that address with Jimmy Bean is there, so you can find it on Vote 411 and show people exactly how it works. And then obviously when we get to the fall with our general election, it will have our candidates and their answers. So when folks go in on their own in October, it'll be there ready for them, hopefully. And we can also share information about what the league does, the programs we have, the voters guide, the candidates forum, and the documentary that is tomorrow, but will also be showing in March, the Trailblazing Women in Ohio Politics. Will be, 10 days after the Expo. And if you are one of our volunteers, if you could take a group picture, Marilyn will be there in the morning to do a picture. But I think it would be nice if we could get each group, have a little group picture so we can have multiple shots. Let's see. And I think I covered most of that. Are there any questions? Anything I didn't cover? Anything you still want to know?
I'll just say, I know that we talked about a lot of different things during this presentation, and especially since we're still a bit away from the Expo, that's a lot to have to retain and remember between now and then. So just so everyone is going to know, I have blocked off that day. So I'm planning to be there the whole time, and there's going to be somebody there, at least one person there for every shift for whoever is volunteering, that's going to be able to, re-go over any of this information and kind of serve as a point of reference for anything that you want us to talk about again, or go over anything you want to know while you're out there volunteering to register people to vote.
So you probably said this, but I'm reading here. Is it in the Junior Fair building? Is it in the Pratt Pavilion? Where is the?
It
Pratt
is in the
Pavilion?
Pratt Pavilion, which is the nice, big, new one.
Okay.
And there will be
Matt,
signs the day of.
what?
There'll be signs, I'm sure, the day of as you're driving in.
Matt, back to what you said, if we can't remember everything. I have recorded the entire transcript of this meeting and I will save it. And if people want me to send it to them, I can.
I can also share the PowerPoint slides as well in email.
Yeah.
You'll have the
Should we-
information in more ways than one.
Well, and isn't this, we're gonna put the presentation on YouTube, right?
As long as that technology works.
Yeah, exactly.
Janet, is that what you want me to do? Is you want me to send this recording to Jennifer to put on YouTube? Because she's the one that puts stuff on YouTube for us.
Well, does the group think that's a good idea? People who couldn't come tonight might want to sit and watch this. Katelyn, do you and Matt have any problem with that?
No, I'm comfortable.
All good?
Okay,
Okay,
let's do it.
so do it that way rather than try to send this to everybody.
We could tell everybody that it's posted and then they could go if they're interested. I would prefer it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that's-
when Jennifer gets it posted, we could send the PowerPoint with a link or to the YouTube.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Alrighty. Well, if there are no further questions, I think we can wrap up. We kept it under an hour. Thank you all for participating.
Oh, thank you, and Matt, this has been
Thank you.
fabulous.
Great
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Great job.
Is something still in the chat? Oh, Karen, thank you, cute. Okay,
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye-bye.